Morning grind with pork rinds.
Welcome to the show.
Base Brawl right here in North Georgia. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a Winging It Wednesday presented by your friends at the pub in LJ. Today is the day, Wednesday, $1 wings all day long at the pub in LJ. And once again, we appreciate those guys being on board with us right here. Hey, North Georgia, what's up? Dave Garner with you till 11 o'clock this morning. Again, Chuck Oliver coming up at 11 with Southern Sports Today, the king of college football. But I'm here with the king himself, man, John Davis. Big John joining us right here on another Wednesday edition of the program. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, and those dollar wings are sounding better and better every time you mention it.
I tell you what, man, they're good. I mean, they're good. That's the thing. And who doesn't love a big plate of wings, right? I mean, I'm a legendary known basher. You know, man, I love the bash nights, the all you can eat type nights. I try to stay away from that, obviously, at my age as much as possible. But sometimes I give in my cheat meal. But hey, if you get one cheat meal a week, head on over to the pub in Elijah. They'll hook you up with those $1 wings here today. Hey, last night, John, again, a lot of stuff we're going to get into over the next few minutes right here. Of course, the bulk of the conversation will be with the Masters. We've got to reveal our picks that we talked about on Monday, so we're going to do that right here on the program today and kind of talk a little bit about, the Masters, the leaderboard a little bit, the projections, the favorites going into the tournament and all that. Of course, we're going to have football talk because, as always, here with Big John, we got to talk football, right? Once again, he's got his Georgia Tech shirt on, and so we are ready to talk some spring football practice, NFL, you name it. We'll also take a trip down memory lane later in the show with the refrigerator mover again, my man, John Davis. But first off, before we dive into all the golf and all the football and everything else, man, did you catch that brawl last night? The Atlanta Braves and the L.A. Angels out there in Anaheim emptying the benches last night, clearing it, and it was former Atlanta Brave World Series MVP Jorge Soler that got tangled up with Ronaldo Lopez, who basically looked at him and said, "Hey, I'm right here, come get me." And Soler obliged, and there you go.
I caught the tail end of it. I was sitting out by the fire pit last night, and I caught the tail end of it. And, who doesn't like a good fight?
Right,
it's like the old adage, you go to a hockey game to watch hockey, but instead you get 30 minutes of fighting. And, and it's always a little bit more entertainment. So I always get a kick, though. I'm not making fun, and it's just me, but I always get a kick out of these baseball players fighting because to me, it just looks like two girls out there just kind
flailing arms,
and hoping that they land one, and it always takes me back to that fight. And I think it was Nolan Ryan, but I think Ventura.
It was Robin Ventura. That's the classic
got
one.
into a fight, and Nolan's not going to mess around. 45 years old, he just puts him in a headlock and just starts pounding away.
One of the most iconic moments of all time.
Oh, exactly, and you have to wonder what Ventura was even thinking because you don't mess with Nolan.
I was going to say,
he's an old savvy dude,
and and you're right. I mean, he was definitely in the twilight of his career at that point, but yet. Here's a young, big, strong Robin Ventura going out there and basically getting beat down. And so, those kind of things happen in hockey, like you said, every 10 minutes, right? I mean, I was telling you on Monday, we went to the match there in Athens on Saturday night, and there were 4 or 5 fights. I mean, that were really, I'm talking, they were on top of each other, like just wailing into each other.
Right.
But you're right,
Well, and the nice thing is I've been to a couple of hockey games in Buffalo to where even before the game starts and they're centered around ready to take the first puck, and they drop the gloves.
Now, And
the best part is when the goaltenders drop the gloves.
Yes, the goalie fights are the best. Because one of those guys has got to go all the way down to the other side of the rink, right? I mean, he's got to go to the other side of the ice to initiate that. And a lot of it's predetermined, like when we saw with the Four Nations face-off, man. I mean, they had 3 fights in the first 9 seconds between USA and Canada. And but I think that's what makes baseball fights so special. And to your point, they're not always great fights, but because they don't happen very very often when they do happen, it kind of becomes big news, right? And it's usually, you know, a thing where everybody comes in. Guys, you know, get fined in the locker room if they don't come out of the bullpen. So you always see the guys throwing up their gloves and running, you know, hauling in from the bullpen, you know, because they get in trouble internally if they don't, you know. So, yeah.
Well, and not to take away, but, you know, sometimes when that happens, Dave, because the Braves have been on a 3-game skid, and sometimes that's motivation. Sometimes that's just, you know, hey, look, you know, we started off pretty good. We won our first couple of series, and then we go out and kind of, you know, crap the bed a little bit in Arizona, and then you get out to Anaheim, and you know, somebody's like, you know, we need to kind of stake our territory.
Let's spice this thing up a little bit. What somebody wrote last night, it was hilarious. They said, I didn't have Walt Weiss tackling Jorge Soler on my Braves bingo card for this season, but that's basically what happened. I mean, obviously Jorge Soler spent some time in Atlanta, was part of the World Series team, of course, and was named the MVP of the World Series with the Braves that year. So kind of ironic that it was a former Brave that got into it with Ronaldo Lopez last night. But yeah, took exception. I think he had hit a home run off him early in the game, and so he came in a little high and tight, you know, a ball that was a wild pitch, you know, and you know, allowed a base runner down there. And but, you know, they sat there and just stared at each other for a minute or so. And then Lopez is like, well, what are you looking at, man? Come get, you know, you going to sit there and stare at me? Come get me. And so, Jorge started slowly walking towards the mound, and it was on, man, you know. Yeah. But, yeah, a lot of fun last night. More importantly, though, the Braves do get the dub. They do put the brakes on a 3-game skid. They had lost 3 in a row, of course, up to that point, so they take Game 2 of the series. They'll go back at it again today. And, again, Atlanta, you know, getting a good pitching performance last night. Of course, Lopez, when all that happened, got ejected, so he lasted, I think, 4 2/3. He didn't quite hang in there long enough to actually get the win, per se, but the rest of the bullpen kind of picked him up. Really didn't allow an earned run all night long. 2 of the 2 runs that scored for, and I always want to call them the Anaheim Angels. I know they've gone to L.A. even though they're in Anaheim, the L.A. name. But yeah, so, you know, 7 runs last night for the Braves. Ozzie Albies continues to, you know, hit the ball well, the usual suspects. So, again, a big one last night by the Braves to get off the schneid there and get things back in the win column. Hey, we were talking, too, and you and I were here on Monday together. But we were breaking down the national championship March Madness, you know, game. Right. Well, you and I haven't had a chance to talk about that. Yesterday I had Billy D in here. We talked a lot about that matchup. Michigan, of course, winning their first title since 1989. But I did want to circle back and get your thoughts on it, because I know, as you say, I'm forcing you to pay attention to some of this stuff that you wouldn't normally pay attention to. But I want to give you your chance, man, to chime in and opine about that Natty on Monday night.
Well, you know, I told you that I wasn't going to watch the end of the first half and the end of the second half, but Netflix was we had finished a few shows, so I decided to go ahead and tune in.
There you go.
You know, I was talking to my buddy last night, Warren Sellers, who coaches up at North Murray basketball, and I will say this, you know, I have a tendency to be a little bit harder on the refs, especially when they're doing it one-sided.
Yeah.
But I will say this. One, they called a very bad game, but at least it was the same for both teams.
Consistency, as we talk about. I mean? Right.
I didn't feel like one team was getting a bigger pick than the other.
Yeah.
I felt like, you know, at the end, they started calling a couple of ticky-tack calls that they shouldn't have called, but you know, it is what it is. But you know, at the end of the day, Michigan, I think, is just too. I mean, to me, it just looked like men against boys.
Oh yeah.
Even though UConn is a very good team,
right?
Michigan just looked like, and you know, when I found out, you know, in the all transfer team and all of that stuff, every one of them were 22 and older.
Yeah.
And they look like young men.
Yeah.
You know, and they just they held on. They made the fewest mistakes, but you know, you just go back and you know, we talk about this all the time, is that you hate for officiating to be involved. You know, the officiating, the officials, you know, the main official that I've always been told will have a meeting before the game, and it'll say, men, we're not part of the game.
Right.
You know, let's call it fair. Let's call it like we see it. but don't interject yourself because that's what's going to ruin it.
Right.
And,
yeah.
I mean, Dave, I think you watched as well, but there were guys in there taking 4, 5, and 6 steps.
Oh yeah.
And then
not
getting hammered to the ground, and they didn't call it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I know it's one of those things. We talked about it on Monday, actually, too, on the show, and I think you mentioned you were hoping it was going to be a game where there wasn't going to be anything to get in the way, including officiating. Hopefully, the officials won't get in the way necessarily, and maybe backed away a little bit too much. They certainly didn't get in the way at all, to the point that even Dan Hurley in his post-game press conference, even though on the losing side of things, said, man, to be honest with you, that's more of our style, and if I had these guys officiating every night, I would sleep a lot better. So even in a loss, Dan Hurley was complimenting it, because I think a lot of coaches that play a fast-paced, aggressive style of play, they like it that way.
Right.
But there were times where, UConn was even trying to foul inside the final minute, and they still weren't calling the foul. They were still Michigan was still having to make an extra pass to try to get out of trouble, try to get out of a trap or whatever. But to your point, man, it got very interesting with some of the calling or non-calls on Monday night.
Well, it goes back to we were talking about, when you bring all these referees in from all these conferences that's never worked together.
Yeah.
I can understand the hesitancy of them because, I don't know how you ref. I don't know what you call. I don't know what you think is running through a screen or, stuff like that, or over the back or they're the little ticky-tack fouls.
Sure, yeah.
But they must have had a conversation because they seem to all of them be on the same page.
Yeah, they were all in it together. So at least they were, like I said, for the most part, consistency is what you look for there. But, nonetheless, Michigan, like you said, I think just kind of, head and shoulders really above the rest of the field, playing their best ball over those final 2 weeks. The tournament.
Well, and then exactly, they peaked at the right time. And Warren and I were talking also. He because he's the expert in basketball, and I always love talking to him. But he was talking about he thinks from his point of view that it's moving. It's almost like NBA light. That game Monday night kind of showed that the NCAA is heading towards that.
Starting to adopt that style of, the 4 and 5 step Euro step type plays and things.
Exactly. They want to see the dunks. They want to see the spectacular shots and everything, which, obviously turns a lot of us off because you like to see, especially at the college age.
Right,
you like to see, the calls being made and things like that. But and then the other thing they're talking about, the all transfer team of having all 5 kids being transfers. Well, that ship's already sailed, so you can't really, everybody's like, well, this ain't fair, and this blah blah blah, and everybody's like, yeah, be quiet.
Well, that's the environment we're in, and so Michigan was the first team to have all 5 starters, all that were transfers in to the program, and guess what? They ain't gonna be the last. There's moving forward, I think you're going to start to see a lot of that. So and it was over $13 million. It's a $13 million payroll. There you go. Yeah, payroll. We can call it what it is at this point. So, again, exactly. Michigan with that. Hey, we'll continue that NIL discussion and some of those things here on the other side of break. We're up against it right now. We'll go ahead and step aside and be right back with more of this Winging It Wednesday edition of the Morning Rant, brought to you by your friends at the Pub in Ellijay. We're the home of ESPN Radio in North Georgia on the Sports Pig app and online at sportspigradio.com.
Tired of shouting your business's name into the void and getting nothing but crickets? Your brand deserves more than awkward billboard glances and flyers lining bird cages. Right now, listeners are hearing me ramble on instead of your ad. That's a touchdown for missed opportunities and a fumble for your wallet.
Recovered, Atlanta. Game over.
Your ad could be here, making fans laugh, cheer, and most importantly, call you. Go to sportspigradio.com or call 678-454-9552 and get your business off the bench and into the game.
Big opinions of the big games. from the big mouths.
Man, I think it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's the Morning Rant on WPGY, the Sports Pig, North Georgia's home for ESPN Radio.
Sit down.
Back here on a Winging It Wednesday, presented by our friends at the Pub in LJ. $1 wings all day long. Again, the pub located right there, going up Maddox Drive there in LJ. Check them out. Again, they got a lot of specials really throughout the week, and they stay open later than anybody else does. On the weekends, they stay open until 2 a.m. So when, a lot of the small towns around our North Georgia area roll up the sidewalks around 9 o'clock, man, those guys are still going at it throughout the night there. Again, the Pub in LJ. We appreciate you guys being with us. Be sure to catch us on social media. The Sports Pig is on Facebook. Our show, The Morning Rant, is on Instagram. You can also watch full video episodes of the show daily on YouTube. The podcast version of the show is also available on sportspigradio.com and wherever you listen to your favorite daily podcast on both Apple and Android platforms, including Spotify and Podbean. You can also catch me on Twitter at Dave Garner 777. And Big John, you've got, I believe it's John Davis _ 6'5", your old number right there. John Davis _ 6'5" on Twitter as well. Hey, we were talking before the break, excuse me, about March Madness and NIL, and you said something about the $16 million payroll or what have you, and that kind of that kind of plays into our discussion. You and I have kind of had this long ongoing discussion about NIL, transfer portal, all those sorts of things. But to your point before the break, because I wanted to spend a little bit more time on it, man, I mean, that is the environment that we're in. Whether you like it or not, whether you embrace it or not, you're going to continue to see that. We saw that with Indiana back during the football playoff. I mean, very much the same thing. Yes, there were a few guys that came over with, Signetti from, James Madison, but there were some other guys there too. I mean, and now that's where we're at. You're going to have the opportunity, a program like Indiana that's done nothing, throughout their history. You're going to have some players like that that are going to be able to work the system and make a name for themselves. And teams that you wouldn't think are, the outside the blue bloods are going to be, right. Some of the teams are going to be competing year in and year out.
Well, and I think what you're going to start looking at, Dave, as well is are the head coaches and their GMs and on down the line, are they coaching or are they organizing?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
There's a fine line right there to where, obviously you got to go out, you got to coach game plans, you got to do all of that stuff, but you still have to organize a team. You still have to organize personalities that's going to fit that, that concept, just like Signetti did.
Right.
I had a talk with some coaches down at Georgia Tech. I'm not going to name any names. And, what you and I were talking about at the end of the day is that it all comes back to accountability.
Right.
Hey, look, son, I'm paying you $750,000. You better perform. And if you don't, then we're going to, when are the teams going to have the right to take some of that money back?
Yeah. Based on performance, like you talked about. Yeah.
And I think it needs to be, I truly believe it needs to be performance based. I would definitely go for that because all it does is motivate me.
Yeah.
I didn't even know Bill Fincher, my agent, I never really knew how he handled my contracts. I found out at the end of the year, a couple of years, I'd get a nice little bonus because he had snuck something in there, and I didn't even know about it. But being an 11th rounder, I was always motivated to do well anyway because you're always playing for your next contract.
Right. Oh yeah.
And and seriously, that's the way it is in college football. You're literally playing for your next NIL contract.
Yeah, and it's like we said all along. I mean, the argument has been, basically college is like the new pro, in a lot of ways. I mean, you're already making your money, and now, if you make it to the NFL or you make it to the professional ranks and whatever respective sport, it's almost like at that point, it's kind of your retirement vehicle. You're backloading your career and you're, making that final paycheck or two to hopefully last you the rest of your life, especially if you're smart with it. But yeah, I mean, and so it's really changed the whole complexion of sports, really, even all the way down to the high school level, because we were talking about it the other day. I mean, there's kids that are playing at 4 different high schools in 4 years to try to get to that NIL deal in college to try to maximize, their benefit that they'll get at the next level. That was unheard of 10 years ago. Certainly when we were growing up. I mean, just the idea of that in itself, man, was just crazy.
Well, Warren and I would have been rich men if that would have happened to us here in high school because of what we used to do in LJ. It's and one of the other things that I was going to say, especially with the college going into the NFL, you're seeing more and more NFL players retire younger, right? Because they're making very good money in college.
Oh yeah,
they go out, they get one or two great contracts, maybe three. Whereas the players going to try to play 12, 15, 16 years, they might only be paying two contracts, which might be 8 or 9 years.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
Believe it or not, there are players out there that say, hey, I've got enough money.
Yeah. Calvin Johnson is one that comes to mind immediately. I mean, a guy that could have kept playing, could have padded those stats, broken more records. Georgia Tech guy, but he kind of he still had his health and made what he needed to do. Smart guy, invests business wise, and didn't have to play until he was 40.
Well, fortunately for him, he had, and I didn't know it because they do a good job of hiding it. I think he had a couple of concussions. Yeah. Not so much that would have made him retire, right? But Calvin's such a smart young man that he said, "You know what? I don't need to do this anymore.
Right?
I've already put my Hall of Fame numbers up."
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And kudos to him.
Right, yeah, walking away with it, with his health and everything still intact right there. And, again, it made me think about something else, too, and this kind of is a whole nother discussion that we can dive into at a different time. But then you see guys like Steve McMichael, recently passing away. And, of course, the report came out that, indeed, he did have CTE and things, which obviously that's a whole nother topic for another day. But, again, some of these guys, if they're able to make their money early enough in their career, can avoid maybe some of those long-term health issues down the road.
Right.
Yeah.
And fortunately, with the NFL retired players, we now, because we went on strike that we had talked about before, we were able to assist him and get him the care that he needed. I will say this about Steve McMichael. Even though playing for the Bills, we never really played the NFC, 3 teams a year, maybe 4 teams a year. And we had to play Chicago a couple of times. His nickname was Mongo.
Yes.
And that makes you kind of scratch your head a little bit when that happens, when you find out. But we're in South Carolina at Bryce Stadium. I forget the name of it.
Right. Williams-Brice,
in South Carolina.
Yep.
And we were playing a preseason game. Well, in preseason, you're just trying to, hey, dude, we got season ahead of us.
Right, yeah.
No, he was 150 miles an hour.
Oh, man, I was going to say, yeah.
I will say this. Out of my 8 years playing in all my preseason games, that was probably the one preseason game that I wish I could forget about because he just – it happened to be that one preseason game to where we had to play the whole first half, and then a drive in the second half.
Yeah,
and we're like, "Come on, man!
Just let us this is crazy." Yeah, I tell you what. No matter how you feel about, and I'm a Packer fan, right? So obviously, I have no love lost for the Chicago Bears, but anybody that grew up around that '85 Bears team knows just how dominant they were and how fun they were to watch. I could tell you basically every player on that team, across both sides, fronts, and everything else, because that's just how mesmerizing and how dominant they were. But I don't envy you on that one. I'm telling you, man.
And to top it off, Ralph Wilson came in after the game, and you talked about giving us a beat down. Man, he was humiliated, and
oh my goodness!
And we needless to say, we came out on top, and we had a team meeting on Monday when we all got together, and we quietly put it behind us.
Right.
And,
yeah.
It moved on.
I don't blame you at all. And we're not even into the memory lane with refrigerator mover segment yet. We already got one on the board right there, man. A great story, no doubt about it. Of course, we'll circle back and get some more memorable moments from Big John later in the show as well. Hey, let's start our Masters talk. Again, we're right up against our second break here in a couple minutes, but we'll go ahead and break the ice. And on the other side of the break, we will reveal our 8. Again, John put the challenge out there on Monday to the rest of the hosts right here on the show. We're going to pick our 8 favorites for the Masters this weekend, talk a little bit about some of the things that are going on there. But, par 3 today, kind of kicking things off today over in Augusta. Looks like we're going to have great weather, so it should be a great weekend for it.
So I heard a little story about the par 3 contest. Obviously there's never been a winner. Whoever won that never won the Masters.
Right, never won the Masters. Yep.
So if you're in contention, now everybody obviously thinks they're in contention the first day, and understandably so, because they're great golfers until they get out on the course.
Yeah.
But word has it that if you're going into like the 8th or 9th hole and you're hovering around the top of the leaderboard, you might kind of shank one. And
you might intentionally put one in the drink.
Maybe not get a birdie, but maybe a bogey, just to make sure that you're not going to be up there.
Go ahead and intentionally 3-putt one of those,
exactly.
greens there and everything.
Or let my 3-year-old daughter take a putt from 2 feet.
Right,
and
exactly.
Just see what happens.
And it has been a family affair in a lot of ways. You do see that with some of the practice rounds and with the par 3. I mean, the guys will have their wives or their kids out there caddying for them and things like that. So, I love to see it. I think it's awesome. So
it is. I'll be watching it this afternoon. I can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun right there. I'll have to find a TV some point later today and see if I can latch onto it again. Tomorrow starts the first round, obviously, through the weekend, and looking forward to seeing everything in bloom out at Augusta. And on the other side of a break, we will talk a little bit more about our picks. So we'll break through them, and then we'll come back and talk a little football with Big John Davis right here on this Winging It Wednesday edition of the Morning Rant. Thanks for being with us once again right here on the home of ESPN Radio in North Georgia, on the SportsPig app and online at sportspigradio.com. It's the Morning Rant right here on WPGY, the SportsPig.
Tired of shouting your business's name into the void and getting nothing but crickets? Your brand deserves more than awkward billboard glances and flyers lining bird cages. Right now, listeners are hearing me ramble on instead of your ad. That's a touchdown for missed opportunities and a fumble for your wallet.
Recovered, Atlanta, game over.
Your ad could be here, making fans laugh, cheer, and most importantly, call you. Go to sportspigradio.com or call 678-454-9552 and get your business off the bench and into the game.
We bring the heat. You bring the trash talk.
Come on, man. Are you serious?
It's the Morning Rant, live on the SportsPig app and sportspigradio.com.
Back here on a Winging It Wednesday with my man, John Davis. Dave Garner in with you till 11 o'clock this morning. Halfway home here on this Wednesday edition of Winging It Wednesday of the Morning Rant, Monday through Friday, right here 10 to 11 on WPGY, the SportsPig. We are the home of ESPN Radio in North Georgia. Again, the SportsPig app, download it, take us wherever you go. And you can also check out our live stream daily on sportspigradio.com. Also catch us on social media. Again, a spring break edition of the show, too, if you will, because a lot of the local area schools are on spring break. Next Friday, the Murray County Parade of Champions. I've got my green on here today. It's kind of a golf shirt there, but again, a lot of our area high schools wearing green. I mean, Pickens, Murray County, you name it, man. We've got Harrison down there in the Kennesaw area, I think, that sports some green. So yeah, there's a lot of folks listening in right there, but we appreciate you guys listening from wherever you may be listening from this morning. And hey, and I'm just kind of bringing this up. I saw a clip earlier this morning on social media. There was a guy that was going for a foul ball last night. And I think it was maybe in Tampa as a Rays or somebody like that. And the guy, he was a big fella, mind you, and maybe even larger than you in some respects. Lost his pants basically, going for a foul ball. I mean, hit one and just kind of turned around, went for this ball, and, I mean, his pants went down, I mean, to, like, his knees. And, I mean, everything was and so they had to quickly, the TV camera had to quickly cut off of him, of course. But they were having some fun with that during the broadcast. If you haven't seen that clip, look it up. Just Google, man loses pants chasing foul ball, and the clip will pop right up there. But, a buddy of mine, Art and Coop and some of those other guys had texted this morning and said, "Hey, man, we may have a new mascot for the Sports Pig." So I was like, "Oh my gosh, you guys are wrong, man. You guys are wrong." Oh my goodness!
While that's never happened to me, I will say a belt is a man's best friend.
Yes.
So,
trust me. Yeah, no, it is for me too, and you got to tighten that thing up a little bit, man. Make sure those pants don't come down there. But yeah, it was kind of funny. Hey, we're talking about the Masters as we kind of dive into our third segment right here. We got memory lane with the refrigerator mover coming up as well. We'll talk some football, but I did want to get our Masters picks because today is the day, as we mentioned in the last segment. Par 3 today, of course. First round tomorrow. Coverage begins on ESPN. That'll transition over, I think, to CBS. Probably for the weekend as it normally does there. But, man, looking forward to it. I mean, this is the one golf tournament that I really look forward to all year long. We had my man Billy D in here yesterday. He's an insider, plays a lot, watches a lot. He's already won some tournaments himself this year with his group that he plays with. And I'm admittedly not as big an actual golfer. I used to play a lot. I just haven't had the opportunity to get out and play as much, and I'm hoping to change that. But nonetheless, we're going to give it a shot here, and we're going to talk about our favorites going in to the tourney this weekend, and I'll share what's been shared with me so far, and then you and I can break it down as well, John. But, man, I mean, just right off the top, if you had to give me one name before we reveal our 8, man, who do you like? Who do you like this weekend?
I get one. I'm a creature of habit. We go back to the Final Four, okay, because I picked almost all number ones.
Right.
But so I did a little AI homework today. Excuse me. 22 and 24, Scotty Scheffler won, 22-24, so 26 comes around. But I tell you what, my pick this year is a guy who's won 2 big tournaments on the Live Golf Tour.
Yep.
And I just think it's his time. I think from listening to some of the interviews that he's had this week, he really seems to be mentally into it, even though he is still a fans player.
Yes.
I think Bryson DeChambeau. I think that this might be the tournament that he breaks out, and all his mechanics, and he can play. He's got a shot for every hole. Listening to a couple of the experts on TV, which I really don't like.
Right.
But how Augusta makes you shape shots.
Yes.
And they feel like that he's one of the guys that has a chance to master the course.
Yeah.
Pun intended, I guess.
I think so, to break through right there. Last year, everybody said, Rory was kind of playing mind games with Bryson. It worked. I think that DeChambeau this year will have like you said, mentally, I think as long as he's there, he's got a shot because, no one's going to really outdrive him off the tee with the ground presumably being kind of hard because, it's been dry here in North Georgia. The ball's probably going to carry. It's going to roll a little bit more. So it certainly favors a longer hitter on some of those, especially some of those, par 4s and 5s, obviously, that we'll talk about. But, yeah, I can't argue with you on that one right there. I'm going to go ahead and tell you what Coop, again, Will, our Thursday, Friday, we'll talk to him tomorrow. He went ahead and forwarded me what he had there. And now, again, this is not a draft, so we can all pick, the same guys, but nobody knows who they pick. So we're going to have multiple guys. But Coop, and I'll run down his list real quick. He likes, of course, Scotty Scheffler. He likes last year's champ, Rory McIlroy. The 2 live golfers that we've talked about, John Rahm and Bryson DeChambeau. He loves Aberg. Ludwig Aberg is a guy that a lot of people have as an odds favorite. Cam Young, a guy I really like. Cameron Young, I think, is a guy that certainly has a shot. He's on Coop's list. Matt Fitzpatrick is a guy that could be a little bit of a sleeper, and Tommy Fleetwood as well. And so those are the 8 for Will Cooper this morning right here. John, do you want to give us your 8, or do you want me to go first?
Well, you basically said my list just about. I was wondering if Coop had somehow got my list from me. But every one of his picks are exactly right. I did pick Oberg. Is it Aberg or Oberg? I forget how you say it.
Yeah, maybe Oberg. Yeah, I'm trying to remember there.
Cam Young, who I believe has a chance. Oberg or Aberg.
Right.
Xander Schauffele has been kind of lurking around.
Right.
And Tommy Fleetwood is not one of mine, but my 8 are Bryson, Rahm, Scheffler, Fleetwood, McIlroy, Aberg, Xander Schauffele, and Cam Young.
Okay. Yep.
And I'm going to go ahead. It's hard for me not to pick Scheffler because he hasn't. Well, and he just had a baby too, so that could mentally play into
and
it
he's had a layoff.
But I think at the end of the day, I think Bryson's going to come in, and I think just because of the greens or the course is going to play a little bit harder weather-wise. I think you can see a score as low as 15 under. So I picked him to win at 15 under. And I'll say this about some of the other golfers that we might not be talking about, Dave, and you'll understand this as well. Some of them are more accurate driving wise,
right?
Which is great, and it's going to give them a chance to get on the green.
Sure.
Well, that's where it stops right there with some of these golfers, because once you get on the green, I had a friend tell me, and I might have said this last week or when we were talking, is that he has actually gone out there. Now, this is a guy that caddies over there.
Right.
And he's actually taking groups out there and just put a ball on the green.
Yeah.
And they still couldn't break par.
Yeah. Wow.
So and he says you have no and I think
that's amazing.
Yesterday, I think yesterday they were talking about the TV cameras don't do the greens justice because we have no idea the undulation of it, or hey, that looks like it's got to go left to right, and sure enough, it's
That's exactly Billy D right here on the Morning Rant was saying that. He's been out there. I know have visited, and he was saying you just can't understand the undulation is the word, which that's too big a word for me. I'm not smart enough to use a word like that. But that's the proper term there. You just don't understand how uneven those greens are, until you get out there, because you see a guy miss a 4-foot putt, you think, oh man, his nerves just got to him. But what you don't understand is, that course is like it's like almost like a 90-degree angle you're having to negotiate there. So that's pretty crazy that you can put a ball on the green, and I wouldn't make par. I mean, I could just tell you, because I'd be about 6-putting everything on some of those greens there for sure. So again, it totally makes sense. Let me reveal my 8 real quick. Now, I figured everybody would pick Scotty Scheffler, so I tried to throw in a few we're not playing for money, so I just tried to throw in a few wild cards, just some guys that may not be picked in the top, 10 or 15 betting odds wise. I didn't really get back to page 2 or 3 of my big printout list. I will say that. So I do have a lot of the same guys you guys have. But I knew everybody would take Scotty Scheffler, so I didn't pick Scheffler, even though I love Scheffler and I would cheer for him. But I did pick the 2 live guys. I picked John Rahm, Bryson DeChambeau. I picked Auberg as well. Anything with a symbol over a letter is hard for me to pronounce, so we'll just go with Auberg. I do love Xander Killing Me Schauffele. I do like him because, to your point, I think he's been playing some pretty good golf there. I've said it all along. I like Cam Young. I like Matt Fitzpatrick. I've got him on my list as well. And I went down a little bit further down the list for my last 2, and I'm going to pick Colin Morikawa, who I know has been dealing with a little bit of back injury, so a lot of people are kind of writing him and Rory off a little bit because Rory is also dealing with some back issues. But Morikawa, again, a guy who I like because no one's really expecting him to do much there. And then I also went down a little bit further, and I picked a guy that you and I talked about a little bit on Monday, and that's Brooks Koepka. Another guy that, is kind of fell off for a little while, but now starting to kind of come back and kind of refine his game a little bit. So I could definitely see maybe somebody like Koepka at least being in the mix. Overall, I'm like you, man. I got to go. I don't know if it's just my heart or my mind, because I kind of want DeChambeau to win. I'm kind of, rooting for him as well to finally get over the hump and win his first Masters. I think that maybe this is the year he does it. I hope he does it. So I'm picking him as well there. But, what we're going to do, just so you guys know out there that are listening, we're going to add up all the total scores of the 8 that we picked. lowest score wins, and the winner gets a cheeseburger or something like that. So, but yeah, having fun with it right here, But I'm excited. Like I said. It's a tradition unlike any other, and so, man, I'm ready, man. We're in that time of year, man, that the stuff's blooming around the house, grass is being cut, and man, it's time to hit the fairways, man. So,
well, I'm not going to show you my yard. We're in the process of resodding.
Right.
We've gotten enough letters from the HOA to where they finally shamed us into resodding, and where I can promise you that we're never going to win Yard of the Month Club.
Right.
But we did plant about 15 rose bushes in the front yard, and it looks a lot better. But the pick that you just talked about, Brooks Koepka, it was hard for me not to put him on there because, the thing I like about him is that I know he's not, but he appears to be a jerk.
Right,
because he appears to be such a loner, which I love, and I think, a lot of people forget he's won 5 majors.
Oh yeah. He's definitely
he's kind of I'd say fallen off a little bit, but I would look. I'm going to be for any live golfer that's out there just because of one person, and that's Brady Chamblee, who's on the Golf Channel.
Right.
I cannot stand that man. And he tortured the live golfers and stuff. And now that they're coming back, and now that live golf is being widely accepted across the world, not just the U.S., but across the world, he's having to eat. And I love every minute of it. And
that's
anytime
hilarious.
a live golfer can come in and play well and do well, it makes my heart that much happier.
I love it. Shake it up right here again on the morning rant. Liv sticking it to the PGA there. So, we'll see what happens, man. It's going to be a lot of fun. Hey, thanks for joining us right here on this edition of the show. We're going to take our final time out. When we come back, we will take a trip down memory lane with the refrigerator mover, all that much more straight ahead on this Winging It Wednesday edition of the Morning Rant, presented by your friends at the Pub in LJ. $1 wings all day long. Go check them out. Hey, we're the home of ESPN Radio in North Georgia on the Sports Pig app and online at Sports Pig Radio. We're back in a sec.
Tired of shouting your business's name into the void and getting nothing but crickets? Your brand deserves more than awkward billboard glances and flyers lining bird cages. Right now, listeners are hearing me ramble on instead of your ad. That's a touchdown for missed opportunities and a fumble for your wallet.
Recovered, Atlanta, game over.
Your ad could be here, making fans laugh, cheer, and most importantly, call you. Go to sportspigradio.com or call 678-454-9552 and get your business off the bench and into the game.
Morning Grind with Pork Rinds.
Welcome to the show.
It's the Morning Rant, weekday mornings from 10 to 11 on 98.1, 93.7, and 101.1 on the H2 dial. WPGY, the Sports Pig.
Back here on a Winging It Wednesday edition of the program. Thanks for joining us. We're here till 11 o'clock this morning. Chuck Oliver coming up next with, again, the king of college football with Southern Sports today. I'm here with Big John Davis chopping it up on a Wednesday morning before the Masters. Again, a lot of things, of course, going on in the world of local sports, and we appreciate you guys joining us. WrestleMania, by the way, coming up next weekend. The cards are set for both days there. We're talking earlier about a legend in Steve McMichael, who I want to say had a brief wrestling career. And some of those football players tend to be naturally transitioned into pro wrestling. You've seen some of the guys, like the Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar's of the world that, gave it a go for a little while. Of course, Roman played at Georgia Tech, so you got a lot of local guys there. Did you ever consider possibly becoming a professional wrestler at any point?
Yeah, no. never crossed my mind.
Oh man,
I'm not an actor.
You didn't even have to even think about that one.
No.
Oh man, I tell you what. Yeah, I mean it's.
It's funny you said that. I'm sorry to cut you off. On my X account, there's been a lot of pop-ups on WrestleMania, and I've been wondering. So you brought that up. I didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
But one of the most, to me, me and Warren grew up with the the Anderson brothers.
Oh, yeah. Ole and Arn.
And
I went to school with Ole's son, yeah. Brian.
Oh, did you really?
Rogowski.
Awesome.
Their last name's Rogowski, yeah.
We grew up with all those guys back in the late 70s and early 80s. But one of the most iconic the plays that I remember, and it showed up on my feed the other day, was when Hulk Hogan lifted up Andre the Giant.
Oh, yeah.
And body slammed him.
I think it was like an anniversary this year, something like 30th or something like 40th or something, something like that. I think 40th anniversary. So, yeah, the WrestleMania 3 at the sold-out Detroit Pontiac Silverdome, man. One of the most iconic wrestling moments of all time was, seeing Hogan pick up Andre the Giant and pin him.
Exactly. Then you got, your Ric Flairs. You got, unfortunately, a lot of those guys are gone now. But, but no, I remember, again, as we said, we didn't have cable television out in the country, so I had to go to Warren's house to be able to watch PBS or whatever it was on, and we would just sit there glued to the TV.
Yeah, I know. I go all the way back. I mean, I think my earliest memory was obviously kind of like the Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant. Saw the Von Erichs a little bit, when I was a kid and kind of popping up. So that's about my earliest memory there. But wrestling's popular. I say it all the time. We talk about everything on this program, right? 80% sports, 10% food. The other 10% is music and entertainment. And I would put wrestling in that kind of entertainment category, certainly. But we'll talk a little bit more about WrestleMania leading up to the big matches next week there. Again, Cody Rhodes, a Sprayberry grad, Lassiter grad. He went to Lassiter, Dusty Rhodes' son there, and he'll be taking on Randy Orton in the big match on the first night of WrestleMania. So, yeah.
And I will say this, throwing it back a little bit, I remember the old Red Gym in LJ. My dad helped build it back in the 50s.
There you go.
But I remember that was the first wrestling match I ever went to, and the headliners were the two big 500-pound twins that rode the little tiny motorcycles.
Oh goodness!
and I remember going in there with Warren, and we were sitting there, and you'd see Granny over there with her spit cup, and just up there yelling and shaking her fist and everything. And
I love it.
You'd see. Look, they're athletes. We all know. We all know that you have to be a great athlete to do that. But also, you have a lot of showmanship in there.
Yeah.
We would, we can finagle ourselves around closer to the pin or the ring, and you'd all of a sudden see this little razor or something come up, and they'd go like this, and then they
cut their forehead a little bit.
All of a sudden, they'd get hit, and here comes the blood.
Yeah, get that blood going. Yeah. Oh my goodness, yeah, so many different memories there, and obviously a lot of people get into that, man. I mean, they absolutely take it seriously and think it's real. I would say this: a lot of people say it's fake. I wouldn't say it's fake. I would say it's scripted, but I wouldn't say it's fake from the standpoint of, to your point, man, those guys do go through a lot. They put their bodies through an absolute lot, night in and night out. So again, we'll talk a little bit more about WrestleMania next week. Hey, speaking of going down memory lane, it's time to do that right now with Big John.
It's time to take a stroll down memory lane with the Refrigerator Mover.
All right, so here we go, a segment each and every week where Johnny's already thrown out some good stories today, but you got one more in the tank for us, brother?
With spring practice coming around with football, I was watching some UFL last night, and whenever I have an opportunity to go out and speak to groups and give them a little bit about my life and everything. A lot of it centers around growing up in LJ.
Yeah.
And of course, at that time, there were a lot of Georgia fans, wanting me to go to Georgia and everything. But I'll always remember, and I showed you a picture, one of the first shows of me holding up the hedge over in Athens.
Right,
and,
yes.
One of the stories that I like to tell that I don't know if it's well received with the Georgia fans, but the Tech fans love it.
Here we go.
1984 was the year that I think there was an article that came out and it pretty much said Fisher cut bait. Bill had been there, Coach Curry had been there for 3 years, and had recruited some good passes, but it was time for us to take that lead.
Right.
And so 84 we were, I believe, 5-4-1, something like that, heading into over in Athens.
Yep.
And it was the beginning of the Black Watch defense. So we had started getting an identity with ourselves. And one of the greatest things, and of course, I'm out there warming up, and I've got LJ people coming, waving, and of course I ignore them, because I hear them, but I'm just like,
right. You're focused in.
This is my area.
Yes, exactly. And, you're locked in.
But we went out, and the first 2 or 3 series, we were just kind of lollygagging around, and I remember this is one of I had just met my future wife, Hester, and she was on the sideline with her father, and I came off the sideline, and apparently I just led into everybody, and I don't quite remember it that way, because we felt very strongly that we had the better team,
right?
And it wasn't because of my tirade or whatever, but we went on, and at that time, it held probably 84,000 people. They had just built the horseshoe part.
Right, they kind of enclosed it in there and built it up,
and we went out. The greatest feeling in my whole life was by the middle of the third quarter, there were probably about 20,000 fans in the stadium.
They started filing out, man. Oh, goodness.
We had just given them a total beat down.
Right.
And I've said it before. One of the things that I'm the evil man with Georgia is my uncle was sitting on like the 45-yard line behind the Georgia bench. Yeah. And so every time we scored, I would run over to the numbers and just point to them.
Yeah.
So much so that some of the Georgia coaches were running on the field trying to, get at me.
Thinking you were taunting, them.
And go back and, rightfully so, Coach Curry grabbed me by the arm and he's like, do that one more time.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, sorry.
But I was just trying to get
see,
oh, goodness.
To be able to enjoy that fourth quarter with about 20,000 fans there, 10 of them were Georgia Tech
I was going to
fans.
say, most of them were probably yours at that point.
Yeah, and it was a wonderful day, and we had kind of felt like that we didn't get to go to a bowl game because back then they only had 17 bowls.
I was going to say, you didn't have 6 and 6 teams getting into bowl games back then. You're right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so we enjoyed, and we kind of felt like that was the game that catapulted us to the next year, where we ended up 9-2-1, and we went to the All-American Bowl.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So that's a huge memory of mine. Some like it. It's one of those 50% like it, but still 50% don't.
Exactly. But the fact that, to win it in Athens, too, it makes it – I mean, obviously you want to defend your home turf, but to win it inside Sanford Stadium also means a little bit more, too, in front of that many fans and everything. So, the rivalry has been – I mean, obviously Georgia has kind of had their fair share of it lately, but Tech, the last couple of years, I will say this. I mean, really closed the gap. Very competitive games that could have went either way. The 7 overtime deal, a couple of years ago. I think that Brent Key has garnered the respect of people, even from the Georgia side of things, understanding and knowing, that he's a good coach. And I think now there's at least, if nothing else, a little bit of fear, that Tech gives now, bringing that game back to the rivalry status that it should be.
And I also think, to Brent's credit, he's brought in some high school coaches that know the whole state, and one of the big things that you can tell that's a kind of a gauge is that when Georgia Tech is either even or maybe a little bit better in recruiting in Georgia, he's making great strides because. Georgia, you know this as well as I do. For years and years, they always won Georgia. And then Tennessee had their group. Clemson had their group.
Right.
Auburn had their group.
Yeah, Florida State or whoever.
Had their group. But Georgia would end up taking all the big ones, and Tech has and Brent's done it the right way. He's got the high school coach liaisons that go out there. He brings them into the stadium. I bet when I was down there, I saw 15 high school coaches down there.
Right, wow.
And so he's doing it the right way.
Yep.
Listen, it's hard to compete with them year in and year out, but I think we're making great strides. If we're competitive, then anything, as you know, can happen.
Absolutely, man. I love it right here, straight from the refrigerator mover himself, Big John Davis, with a stroll down memory lane and some insight into the Georgia Tech football program as well, presented by your friends at North Georgia Design and Construction. Again, Scott Merrill and his group can build just about anything for you, and we appreciate those guys being right here on the show with us as well. We are about out of time on this Winging It Wednesday edition. My, how time flies when you're having fun. We are getting set for the Masters. Again, March Madness now in the books as we transition to the next great spring event, and looking forward to it this weekend. Big John, thanks for bringing it once again right here on this edition of the show.
Great seeing you, partner.
There we go. We're going to get out of here once again. Visit us on social media, the Sports Pig on Facebook. Our show, The Morning Rant, is on Instagram. You can also watch full video episodes of the show daily on YouTube. The podcast version of The Morning Rant is also available on sportspigradio.com and wherever you listen to your favorite daily podcast on both Apple and Android platforms, including Spotify, Podbean, you name it, pretty much everywhere. You can catch me on Twitter at DaveGarner777. He's at JohnDavis_65, and we will see you next time right here on The Morning Rant. Chuck Oliver up next with Southern Sports Today, the king of college football. Thank you for listening to The Morning Rant right here on SportsPigRadio.com.
98.1 and 93.7 The Sports Pig, where hot takes meet hot mics.